In this video, I aim to be transparent and honest as possible. I will address my past actions, the conflicts I've been involved in, the consequences I faced, and false claims made about me. While some of this may be difficult to discuss, I believe it's necessary to provide clarity and context to both situation and where I stand today. Since January 2024, I spent a great deal of time reflecting on my mistakes. With the release of Tosify's recent video, I feel it's important to set the record straight by addressing misconceptions, correcting falsehoods, and taking full accountability of the wrongs I've committed. Let me be clear, the purpose of this video is to not shift blame, treat this as a form of entertainment, or retaliate against anyone who has spoken about me. Instead, my goal is to acknowledge my actions, share the truth, and demonstrate that I am committed to growing and learning from my past and growing as a person. Let's start with the Amor segment.
Retro was asked to voice Bob in Amor's Bob and Bosit mod. However, it wasn't long before Amor's career suffered a total collapse as a number of people recounted their experience with him. Retro was one of the people to jump in, talking about how Amor mishandled the roles of who was voicing Bob with another voice actor. The confusion stressed out Retro, and he eventually stopped responding to Amor.
In the summer of 2021, Amor reached out to me to voice a character in a Bob and Bosit mod, which I was genuinely excited about. However, over time, his communication became inconsistent, and I later discovered that he had to cast someone for the same role without informing me. I take responsibility for not clarifying my involvement sooner or addressing the situation more effectively, but the lack of communication left me feeling frustrated and stressed. I made an effort to reach out to Amor one final time on both Discord and Twitter to confirm my involvement in the project, but I received no response. Eventually, I chose to step away from the project and move forward.
Fast forward to November 2021, and during a Twitter space, Amor made a few jokes at Retro's expense about this missed opportunity in front of a group of laughing YouTubers.
In November 2021, during a Twitter space, Amor joked at my expense about the missed opportunity in a Bob and Bosit mod. His Twitter audience and friends laughed along, leaving me feeling humiliated and insecure. Given the poor communication leading up to that moment, I felt it was unnecessary and hurtful. I understand the criticism that I should have directly asked Amor about who was cast for the role. Looking back at this, I recognize this as a mistake on my part. As someone new to handling opportunities like this, I let my assumptions and hesitations take over. This was my first major voice acting opportunity, and I lacked the experience to navigate professional conversations effectively.
Whilst the Twitlonger got the usual love and thoughts and prayers that Twitlongers get, a retrospective look at this certainly shows that this statement is out of place and more settling a personal grudge. Whilst others were coming out against Amor with allegations of worker abuse and misconduct with younger people, Retro's complaints were that he felt too intimidated to follow up on a huge opportunity, and had jokes made about him. Why he didn't just straight up ask AmorAltra who was voice acting what remains a mystery to me to this day. Personal opinion, this reeks of being too afraid to ask the McDonald's cashier for more ketchup packets.
However, my decision to speak up about this wasn't about settling a personal grudge. It was about sharing how poor communication and public ridicule affected me personally. I take accountability in a situation for not following up as I should have, but I also want to empathize that these interactions had a significant emotional impact on me at the time. To anyone who's impacted by my decisions during the situation, including Amor or anyone else who viewed my actions as unprofessional, I sincerely apologize. In this next segment, I want to address a Fever Demon situation, an issue that arose in 2022 involving serious accusations of sexual harassment, assault, misconduct, and pressuring others into uncomfortable situations. While you noted that this matter has since been resolved on both sides, I believe it's important to revisit this to provide clarity and share my perspective on what happened.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot in this response. There's the RetroDubs part, where he's like talking much stuff. HunniBunni situation, which I actually don't think should have been involved.
I get where you're coming from, but for anyone who's unfamiliar with the situation, I think it's helpful to provide background and clarify my involvement.
Retro would be banned from the Fever Demons Discord server amidst allegations of making server members uncomfortable, sexual misconduct, manipulation, and pressuring others into sexual situations.
There were two situations I was undergoing at the same time in the Fever Demons community. In situation 1 with HunniBunni, I take responsibility for being childish. In situation 2, I was falsely accused of sexual assault, harassment, and pressuring others. I initially met HunniBunni through Caesar Fever and we quickly became friends. Our conversations often involved playful banters and jokes, which many saw lighthearted and harmless. Over time, my emotions towards them grew, and by November 2021, we became closer, sharing private accounts, including NFSW ones, and eventually sexting. At that time, I mistook this connection as the beginning of a romantic relationship. On New Year's Eve, during one of Caesar's livestream where he was intoxicated, he joked about the idea of us dating. Nervously, I made a lighthearted comment in response, but followed up privately later, we decided to date. However, the relationship ended just after a day or two as we both realized we didn't know each other well enough and had to rush into things. Afterward, we went back to our playful Twitter arguments, but the dynamic shifted. At one point, HunniBunni felt one of my messages was more serious than I intended, and unfollowed me. In response, I acted immaturely, which I regret. My behavior during and after the situation was unprofessional and childish, and I take full responsibility for that. Over time, our relationship worsened and we were no longer on good terms. Despite this, I remained active in Caesar Fever's Discord server as a moderator, where I eventually met another individual, PinkMoonVA, leading to the new chapter of events. My interactions with PinkMoonVA were brief, but we connected quickly despite some red flags, such as their tendency to make inappropriate jokes and noises during a voice chat. In one of the Fever Demon's voice callers, as the two of us, we shared personal frustrations. I vented about my situation with HunniBunni, and they disclosed being falsely accused of grooming a minor, and the conversation ended without apparent issue. However, 3 days later, Pink accused me of sexual harassment, citing out-of-context messages from the times we previously engaged in consensual and mutual sexual discussions. This accusation blindsided me and it resulted in my ban in Fever Demons without a chance to share my side. Adding to the frustration, a moderator publicly announced these accusations, which felt like an unnecessary ambush. After my ban, I focused on another Discord server where I encountered HunniBunni again. Unfortunately, my emotions got the better of me, and I made comments that made him uncomfortable. I deeply regret this behavior and I sincerely apologize to Honey. Back to the Fever Demon situation. When I tried to explain my side to this Fever Demon's moderator, most refused to engage or blocked me, leaving me with no choice but to address the situation publicly. Caesar and his team eventually responded, admitting to some missteps in handling the accusations, but still siding with Pink's claims. They also criticized how I treated Honey during their time, which I accept as valid feedback. While preparing my response to this, I was approached by one of Pink's past victims, who provided evidence of their grooming behavior. I included this information alongside my proof in my public response. Ultimately, this led Caesar and his team to acknowledge that Pink had lied and mishandled the situation. Afterward, Pink deactivated their account and resurfaced under a new alias to escape accountability. I want to be absolutely clear that Pink accusations made against me include claims of sexual harassment, sexual assault, and pressuring others into sexual situations. These claims are entirely false.
What we do know is that this caused a huge commotion behind the scenes, eventually ending in Retro settling his issues with those he was accused of wronging, and mending the bridge with Caesar Fever and the Fever Demons Discord server.
By mid-2022, I remained in contact with members of Caesar's community to address misunderstandings and to take accountability for my actions. I extended my apologies to Caesar, the mod team, and HunniBunni for my mistakes. By late 2022, after one of the admins reached out to me to resolve the situation and offer an apology, I was unbanned from the Fever Demon server. Although there were claims that I wouldn't return and say that I wouldn't return, I decided to give Caesar and his community another chance after we addressed it and resolved the issues. Now, I'd like to address a situation involving ShawnCookie. This was another significant event that required reflection and accountability, and it's important for me to provide clarity and context regarding my actions and the circumstances surrounding it.
Whilst in the Fever Demon server, RetroDubs had made another friend by the name of ShawnCookie. One of them was the aforementioned Jonuh, who made a video discussing the situation and contacted as many people as he could to spread the truth, including RetroDubs. Then there's RetroDubs, a voice actor with over 200,000 subscribers and arguably the biggest perpetrator because Jonuh literally talked to them personally about this stuff when it came out. It's okay. I apologize if I came off antagonistic. You're good. Do you want me to link a video about Shawn? Sure. I know Twitter is ass right now, so I don't know if you got this message. No offense, bro, but why are you still interacting with Shawn? The N-word literally dated a 13-year-old. Did you read Shawn's document? Yes, and he was ass, bro. Half the shit was victim blaming, and besides he literally says I didn't date a 13-year-old without showing proof. Damn, really wish this N-word didn't do this. And then, despite all of this, and despite directly acknowledging the situation, Retro continued to talk to Shawn online. I mean, you were literally warned about Shawn, and a video already came out. You've got no one to blame but yourself, lad.
I didn't watch Jonuh's video, but I did review one of the documents. At the time, I believed ShawnCookie wasn't a predator, and that because I was confused and hurt. So I reached out to Shawn to hear his side, as many others in his Discord server did. Shawn hosted a voice chat where he manipulated and guilt-tripped everybody, including me, into believing he was innocent. Looking back now, I realized that he lied to us and took advantage of our trust. During a livestream on your second channel, one of Shawn's former friends mentioned that I had been manipulated by Shawn's explanations. You acknowledged their comment and admitted to your mistake.
Saying me. I remember you commenting on one of my videos. You commented about RetroDubs, which to be fair, I actually vetted that and I was wrong about that, which fair enough. Fair enough, if that's true.
I understand your video may imply that I was only supporting a predator, and while I see how it might appear that way, I want to be clear. I was misled and manipulated. I regret not seeing the truth further and failing to question Shawn's story more critically. I take full accountability for continuing my interaction with Shawn even after receiving warnings about him. My actions were wrong and I failed to fully grasp the severity of the situation at that time. Regardless of the manipulation I experienced, I should have been more cautious and responsible in my decisions. Additionally, I want to address your tweet about discovering Shawn was pregnant. While I'm not sure if I was the first to learn about this information, I was completely surprised at the time. I want to address a specific claim that's been made that I had ShawnCookie's phone number. This is completely false. The only connections I had with Shawn were through Discord and Roblox. In fact, I had forgotten he was on my Roblox friend list because he had changed his username. I shared his news with others who opposed Shawn because I found it shocking and surreal in the moment. This information was shared during minimum contact with Shawn, during which they occasionally spoke about their personal life. To clarify, my goal was to never rebuild a friendship or support Shawn in any way. Instead, I maintained a minimum contact to monitor his actions and stay informed about any potential return to social media, as he claimed he might do. My intention was to share relevant information with those working to expose his behavior and prevent further harm. In hindsight, I recognize this approach was poorly executed and could have easily given a wrong impression. While my intent was to contribute to accountability, I understand how it may come across. For that, I take full responsibility. To be absolutely clear, I do not condone, support, or excuse ShawnCookie's actions in any way. In the next part, I want to talk about my Gooner Crisis and my very first response I made to the burner account.
Back in November of 2022, an anonymous individual posted a Google document to Twitter, and it was all about RetroDubs and Sheikadoodles. Inside this document, there are 48 pages, mostly screenshots of pornographic drawings that Retro and his girlfriend Sheika had liked on their secret NSFW alt accounts in the last 2 years. We actually haven't mentioned Sheika a lot, but all you need to know is that she's Retro's girlfriend and a Twitter artist in her own right. Anyway, these 48 pages of likes, what do they consist of? Well, the short answer is lots of lolly porn and the like. Retro's Twitter was filled to the brim with Sonic characters, Genshin Impact, plenty of lolly and Shota characters, and plenty of young-looking characters from kid shows. Sheika's likes are mostly the same kind of stuff, as you can see on screen. And hopefully I do not have to go into an in-depth explanation about why being a lolicon or a shotacon or liking this stuff is bad. You are deriving pleasure from sexualized depictions of characters that look like kids. Simple.
In December 2019, at the age of 18, I created my first NFSW account I initially used sparingly. At the time, the Friday Night Funkin' community wasn't prominent, and the account primarily served as a personal space for me to engage in a range of content including lolly-related content, aged-up content, Overwatch, or other adult material. This account was private and no one else had access to it, as it was intended for personal use only. By 2021, the use of my account increased, and I allowed a few adult mutuals to follow me. As Sosify mentioned, my likes during this time including content of featuring characters from franchises like Sonic, Genshin Impact, kids' cartoons, as well as some aged-up art. While I don't offer this as an excuse, I want to explain how I saw this at this time and why I engaged in it. The reason this type of content was in my Twitter likes is that at the time, I didn't view it as harmful. Being exposed to similar content at a young age shaped how I perceived it as I grew older. During my early teenage years, I often searched for pornography and hentai, which influenced my perspective over time. To me, it was always fictional and entirely separate from reality, which is why I didn't recognize it as a potential issue back then. While this content is undeniably controversial, many, including myself, view it differently. I want to empathize that I never equated this content with actual child porn or actual child sexual exploitation materials. This situation was incredibly stressful as people conflated the terms lolly and child porn, leading many people wrongly assume that I possessed actual child porn or child sexual exploitation materials, which is absolutely untrue. I just want to say from my perspective, in my opinion, lolicon content and actual child porn are two entirely separate matters. While I fully understand the controversy surrounding lolicon content, I think it's important to acknowledge a significant distinction. Fictional depictions of 3,000-year-old lolly characters in a sexualized manner are fundamentally different from exploitation and abuse of real children, who are genuine victims of trauma and harm. This distinction does not excuse the engagement with lolicon content, but it highlights the need for clarity in the discussions about the issue. And as I said previously, everybody has their own opinion on this content. I want to make it clear that engaging in NSFW fictional content like Sonic, Genshin, or other types of art never meant that I had inappropriate thoughts or desires towards actual children. I find that idea deeply disturbing and completely unacceptable. I take full accountability for my actions in engaging with this type of fictional content. At the time I didn't see the harm, but now I understand that it was irresponsible and could easily misunderstood or seen as harmful. I failed to consider how others might view this content, and for that, I sincerely apologize.
I mean, even Retro, despite his interest behind the scenes, was tweeting out against Lolicon, so that's crazy projection.
Throughout my time on Twitter, I often spoke about against things I believe were harmful, not just to raise awareness, but also as a way to gain engagement. Looking back, I realized how this approach was flawed and how it contributed to the negative image I created for myself. I prioritized numbers and growth over integrity, leading me to make statements that were not obvious, but at the times blatantly hypocritical. A clear example of this was tweeting out against Lolicon despite my own actions at the time contradicting those words. I want to take full accountability for lying and engaging with lolicon content. My actions hurt others, broke trust, and tarnished my credibility. I was wrong to act this way, and I deeply regret the impact it had on those around me.
In their DMs, Retro doesn't really seem to care about it. "Hey dude, you seen this? A friend sent it to me, so I thought I'd let you know." It wasn't long before Retro posted his own document in defense of him and his partner, and he speaks in a very different tone to how he is in these DMs. He talks about how he turned 18 and decided to make an NSFW account, saying that he did make a mistake by carelessly liking NSFW characters that were underage during this time.
Initially, I didn't take this issue seriously, wrongly assuming it was just an attempt to cancel me. My first response was thoughtless, and in a document I lied about my age and falsely claimed that I carelessly liked NSFW content, when in reality, I was fully aware of my actions. I also used the excuse "I like MILFs" to deflect the accusations, only worsened the situation and reflected poorly on me. And for that, I take full accountability for these mistakes and regret how I handled the situation.
In his response, he pledged to delete the account, but instead he just unliked the tweets, renamed the account, and then posted some cope.
The reason I didn't delete the account is because I still had mutual connections with NFSW voice actors outside of the Friday Night Funkin' community, while also having connections with colleagues and acquaintances in real life. Up to the present day, this account has been deleted, but during the time, I've lied, and that's my fault.
However, the response surprisingly worked, and those who saw it believed Retro's apology. As a result, the document was buried and forgotten about.
While my apology may seem defective at the time, it was built on lies rather than taking full responsibility. I falsely framed the situation as an unjust cancellation attempt, misleading some into defending me while also disappointing others who unfollowed me. My venting on my private account only made things worse, with some comments coming off as guilt-tripping. This was immature, and I take full responsibility for that. 3 days later, I deleted my response after the burner account disappeared, choosing to move on without addressing lingering questions. This leads to the segment in your video, Retro Fires Back, where the document resurfaced on April 9th, 2023.
As a result, the RetroDubs and Sheikadoodles document was re-released by Jonuh in April 2023, attached with an update of screenshots showing that Retro and Sheika were still liking this kind of material up to March 2023. The document's re-release got far more traction than the original document due to the fact that it was being released by someone who people knew, and for those who were seeing it for the first time, they were disgusted. The fact that characters that looked and were this young were being sexualized was shocking, and all eyes went to Retro. He wouldn't take long to hit back with a 16-page document response, which is a general rehash of the same apologies, and more fuckery with how old he was. In this one, Retro talks about liking NSFW art 6 years ago when he was 16, up to when he was 18. But in another screenshot, he said he stopped when he was 16, which is only adding to the lies and confusion. Again, a lot of the screenshots are dated from 2021 and 2022, when he was in his early 20s, and even then the NSFW account was literally made in December 2019, when he would have been 18. Retro is again just peddling a total lie. The document also has a response to the ShawnCookie situation, where he was caught following and interacting with someone who he was directly warned was a pedophile. Retro says, "Or maybe it was because of the fact that I forgot to unfollow ShawnCookie with this instant, and you were constantly breathing down my neck to unfollow and overall calling me a pedophile because I genuinely forgot to unfollow ShawnCookie. It's sickening of you yourself to even have this mindset, and the irony is hilarious. This is again just another lie, I just do not believe this. Maybe he could have forgotten to unfollow Shawn if he wasn't directly replying to him on Twitter after these DMs. Of course, they are never included here. Obviously, this response was awful and quickly picked apart. The people were not pleased, and even Retro knew it. So he spent the rest of the day writing up a 93-page document as a big proper response. Most of it is going over trivial stuff we don't really need to cover, and believe me when I say that I'm saving you and me a lot of time. Retro does admit that he's been liking Lolicon up to when he was 20, finally not lying about his age, but then that's followed up by him deploying the age-old 3,000-year-old dragon argument.
When a document about my actions resurfaced, my initial response was poorly thought out. At the time, I assumed based on the claims from multiple people that Jonuh was behind a burner account in the document. This assumption was fueled by statements Jonuh made, which seemed to align the document organs. However, I learned from Alexander's and others that this was not true. I deeply regret not verifying the facts before responding, and I take full responsibility for this mistake. Believing that Jonuh was responsible, I re-uploaded my response with an additional section addressing him directly. I was frustrated and angry, which clouded my judgment. I want to sincerely apologize to Jonuh for unfairly directing my frustrations towards him. After the backlash from this response, I chose to take a step back and reflect. Unfortunately, when I released the second response, it only failed to address the situation appropriately and only added to confusion. In my second document, I made several poor choices. Instead of taking full accountability, I shifted blame to mitigate backlash. This included the false accusation that Jonuh owned an NFSW account and engaged in similar behavior. Upon reviewing the responses to my document and an official statement from Jonuh, I realized this accusation was unfounded. I deeply regret making this claim, and I take full accountability for spreading misinformation. Additionally, I included a section attempting to define the terms like pedophile, groomers, and weirdos with specific individuals in the community. While my intent was to address these behavior in the Friday Night Funkin' community, I now understand that this come across as shifting blame. I take full responsibility for the harm this caused. Another thing I want to address is through further investigation, I discovered that individual behind the document was not Jonuh, but BluskysTV. BluskysTV encouraged Dumbass Chris to address the document with me privately, but when his discussion didn't happen, they chose to make the situation public. BluskysTV also collaborated with a friend who had access to my NFSW account, capturing screenshots of my likes, which included controversial content. He also repeatedly brought up my resolved conflict with HunniBunni to make me look worse. This is something I want to address further because it felt unnecessary and intentionally damaging. In this document, he even referred to himself as a psychopath, which only adds to the concerning nature of his actions. It's worth noting that the motivations behind this document weren't rooted in genuine concern. Instead, it seemed the document was fueled by anger and frustration tied to conflicts Bluesky had with others in the community. The person involved in exposing my content admitted that their focus wasn't on Sonic-related material, but human-like characters, which feels ultimately hypocritical given their account engagement with similar content, including Lolly-related material. BluskysTV's own history literally makes me questions about their motives. They had admitted to engaging in inappropriate behavior, including sexual conversations with a minor, and sending explicit images to an intoxicated minor. Despite seeking therapies, Blueskys continue to engage in harmful behavior, including stalking and targeting individuals in the Friday Night Funkin' community. It's deeply concerning that someone with such a history would create a document criticizing similar behaviors. Their actions make it feel hypocritical to judge others while presenting themselves as holding as a higher moral ground. While I take full responsibility for my actions and the harm they cause, I believe it's important to highlight the origins of this document for transparency. The video against me keeps BluskysTV anonymous, but given their role in the situation, I feel it's necessary to address their involvement directly. And to BluskysTV, it's hypocritical to criticize others for behavior similar to your own past actions, especially given your admitted inappropriate conduct and ongoing harmful behavior. If you're going to judge others, it's important to reflect on your own history first. The reason Jonuh got access to the document is because BluskysTV deliberately joined a Discord server where Jonuh was present and mentioned the document. This led to Jonuh obtaining it and eventually re-uploading it.
So, I want you to guess what comes after this. Is it more apologies or more arguments? No. It's a false accusation of pedophilia. Yes, I am not making this up. Retro's next move is to go after a small 16 to 17-year-old FNF voice actor by the name of Mochi or Mochi-C1. Retro accuses Mochi of dating a 14-year-old when she was 17, but the best part is that it is totally false. Mochi later made a Twitter thread clarifying that the other person was actually 15 and she was 16, and Retro eventually had to walk this allegation back. Why even go after someone who is, no offense, a total nobody in the grand scale of things? But the truth is that Mochi was one of the people who called him weird on Twitter following the exposed document's release. Not even calling him a pedophile, just calling him weird, and that was enough for Retro to completely slander this person. It's disgustingly petty motivations for something that's totally bullshit.
I want to take the time to sincerely address the false accusation I made against Mochi, and I take full responsibility for my actions. When I was already under immense pressure from the backlash I was facing, someone involved in conflict with Mochi approached me with claims that Mochi was a alleged groomer. Without fully understanding the details of their conflicts, Mochi's age, or even the context of their relationship, I assumed that Mochi was 17, and the other person involved was 14 or 15. Based on these unverified claims and fueled by emotions at the state of time, I irresponsibly put Mochi in the document without reaching out to them for their side. This was a massive failure on my part, and I want to make it clear that my actions were reckless and unacceptable. I have no excuse for not taking the full time to verify these serious allegations, and I take full responsibility for the harm that caused. I also want to address the claim in Toastify video that I labeled Mochi a pedophile because they called me weird.
But the truth is that Mochi was one of the people who called him weird on Twitter following the exposed document's release. Not even calling him a pedophile, just calling him weird, and that was enough for Retro to completely slander this person.
This is not accurate. My frustration stemmed from a now deleted tweet where Mochi participated in joking about my situation, creating a meme that placed me alongside Amor. At the time, I misinterpreted it as them calling me a pedophile. It's important to clarify that Mochi was deeply aware of the backlash caused by their now deleted tweet, which led to others speaking out against it. This backlash eventually promoted Mochi to delete that tweet. My actions were not in response to them calling me weird, but rather due to my misinterpretation of the tweet itself. At the time, I mistakenly believed that the tweet implied that I was being labeled as a pedophile, which influenced my poor judgment. Regardless, my action was inappropriate, and I deeply regret the harm caused by my now reckless and unjustified actions. To be clear, I did not include Mochi in my document out of spite or pettiness. My actions were driven by a mix of anger, stress, and a complete failure to handle the situation with care it deserved. Regardless of intent, I know my actions caused harm, and I take full responsibility for that as well. After realizing my mistake, I privately reached out to Mochi to apologize, and I publicly cleared her name in a now deleted video. I still feel immense guilt for the harm I caused and the stress I added to their life. And I want to take this opportunity to once again sincerely apologize to Mochi for my reckless behavior and the damage it caused. In the next segment, I will address the revelations and burning bridges segment.
Almost 3 months later, RetroDubs dropped everything. Yet another response document standing at 28 pages. There's a lot here, but the main thing to focus on is that Retro states he was groomed into Lolicon.
The document I created was a desperate attempt to escape the backlash after I tweeted an opinion about an FNF composer, which upset a lot of people. The sudden attention and the constant harassment took a significant toll on my mental health. And instead of handling the situation with maturity, I responded impulsively and immaturely. Looking back, I am ashamed of how I reacted this way, and I deeply regret how I handled it.
There's a lot here, but the main thing to focus on is that Retro states he was groomed into Lolicon.
One of the most significant mistakes I made was falsely claiming that I was groomed into liking Lolicon content. This is completely untrue, and I take full responsibility for fabricating this claim. And at 17 years old, I was deeply aware of Lolicon content but failed to care about it. The truth is that I was introduced to Lolicon adult content and porn games at a young age by an older family member. The same individual groomed me into performing inappropriate acts with them, which was around the age of 7 and 9 years old. And while this explains how I was exposed to such content, it does not excuse my actions. I should have been upfront about my past instead of using false claims to deflect criticism. In my attempt to defend myself, I also made poor decisions like the phrase, "I like MILFs," as an excuse to distance myself from accusations and false comparison being made about me, including being likened to Jeffrey Epstein. This defense was not only ineffective, but also extremely dumb and incredibly irresponsible, and I regret using it. I also publicly defended my ex-girlfriend Chica during a backlash we both faced. At the time, I believe I was supporting her, but I now recognize that my focus should have been on addressing my actions. For transparency, Chica and I have since parted ways romantically for reasons unrelated to this entire situation. During this time, I allowed the words and accusations thrown at me to consume me, and I know how sensitive I am to criticism, and instead of stepping back to process everything, I let negativity dictate my responses. I regret letting it affect me to the point where I made such poor decisions and impulsive choices. In this part, I want to talk about BluBelleVA.
One of the friends that he lost as a result of all this lolly drama was BluBelleVA, another prominent FNF voice actor who's known for her work with The Maze. Blue would tweet on June 8th, 2023, discussing how she had stopped talking with Retro because of what he did, yet he would continue to message her on other platforms and eventually got mad that she was avoiding him. So if I may ask, why are you contacting me? I'm sorry if your opinion on me is negative nowadays. I just saw you and thought, oh hey, I know this friend. But I understand if you don't want to be around me because of dumb things that originally happened in 2019. Just kinda sucks for them falsely viewed as things despite already making changes on it. It's okay. Respectfully, I'd rather not have contact with you. It's nothing personal, I promise. I'm glad you are changing, but what happened can't be undone. You need to continue to change, not for everyone, but for you. Don't engage in that shit. You are a grown-ass man. You need to continue to act like one, and not make choices like this. I wish you the best in your change, and this will be my last message to you. Goodbye, and good luck. Hi Blue, it's me, Retro. Since you blocked me, I literally was aware of my choices years ago. I'm changing for myself, not everyone else. I'd care less about them, because they're not included in my life. Don't tell me shit that I'm already aware of and have been changing from years ago. This was just old drama brought up despite me already changing from it. Things happen. The best I can do is make a change and improve personally. Now this is my last message, bye. This is very funny considering Retro's document contained a request saying, if you don't think I deserve a second chance, I kindly request you block me and move on. I guess this is what happens if you block and move on. It is worth noting that Retro has also accused BluBelle of harassing him and sharing his docs and name privately, although there has been no proof to supplement this, and it is never mentioned in the messages here. Ironically, just like Retro, BluBelle's tweet was an insane case of projection, as she was later found to be running her own NSFW voice acting account with underage characters. Though nowhere near as egregious as Retro, Blue's freak behaviour and her constant lies really turned people against her, and she later left the internet in September 2023.
I want to take the action to reflect on my past actions involving BluBelle and acknowledge where I went wrong. My frustration at the time stemmed from BluBelle's past content, which involved voicing fictional, underage, not safe for work material. I felt it was hypocritical for her to criticize me given her own history. Additionally, I perceived a tone of passion aggression in her last message, which only fueled my emotional response. I had hoped BluBelle would be more understanding as my reaction to my situation were mixed. Some found it overblown, while others outright condemned me. After receiving her message, I made an immature decision to text her elsewhere to have the last word. This was an emotional and unnecessary reaction. I fully recognize now that I should have taken her message, reflected on it, and moved on. I also want to admit that it was hypocritical of me to criticize her for engaging in something similar to what I had done. My actions in this situation were wrong, and I take full accountability for them. As for accusing BluBelle of doxing and sharing my legal name privately, I acted out of frustration and made an unfounded assumption. This was entirely my fault, and I deeply regret making such a serious accusation without any evidence to support it. And I understand now how harmful and damaging such claims can be, and I sincerely apologize to BluBelle for my actions. I'd like to clarify the situation surrounding my NSFW account, The Orbit.
Speaking of new NSFW accounts, 2 months later, people found out that Retro and Sheikah had made new private NSFW accounts. Retro's being at their orbit was filled with the usual degeneracy. And of course, when Retro gets caught, so does Sheikah with another private NSFW account.
This was originally my private account, which I later renamed to distance myself from the backlash I was facing at the time. My decision to keep the account active stemmed from the fact that I was still in contact with colleagues and NFSW voice actors, and it served as a space for those interactions. Regarding Sheikah, she created a separate NFSW account specifically for commissioning purposes, and that was its sole function.
Also, why do 2 people who are dating have Twitter NSFW accounts? Is it just me who finds that weird? Anyway, again, can I just say, these 2 are in a relationship. Why do you even have an NSFW account if you're in a relationship?
I'm not entirely sure what's being implied by repeatedly putting this out, but I want to address the claim that it was strange for me to have a private NSFW account. The reasoning behind its creation was to keep my public-facing persona and private interests separate. It was a space intended exclusively for adult audience and trusted mutuals. Many people on Twitter use private NSFW accounts for the same reason, to maintain clear boundaries between their personal lives and their public presence. Engaging with NSFW content on my main account, which had an audience over 19,000 followers, including minors, would have been irresponsible and inappropriate. The private account allowed me to ensure that this content was contained within a space where it was directed towards the appropriate audience. As for your suggestion that it was unusual for Sheikah and I to both have NSFW accounts while we were being in a relationship, I want to point out that this is fairly common. Many adults, including those within the Friday Night Funkin' community and outside of the Friday Night Funkin' community, manage similar accounts for personal or professional purposes. If that seems unusual to you, I respect your perspective, but I don't believe it was out of ordinary or inappropriate.
On December 6th, Retro messaged Alex via a Discord alt with a massive unhinged multi-paragraph DM. We're not going to read it all because it's all wrapped up in more drama that would take too long to explain and has already been mostly settled, but what you need to notice is the general rage emanating through the screen. Ranting about Alex mercenaries saying they're shoving clover up their ears, calling them a shitty drama-hungry piece of shit, insulting Alex for going homeless and saying, "You're so pathetic, I most likely fragile your ego," which is the single most egotistical thing in this entire video. It's actually incredibly funny when you think about how mad this guy was typing away at his keyboard, and it establishes the rage that Retro has towards Alex. Something to keep in the back of your mind as we move to the next segment.
I want to take full accountability for my immature and rage-fueled message I sent to Alexander. At the time, I was holding onto a personal grudge prior from a situation where he had directed similar behavior towards me on Twitter. This combined with the defensiveness over my partner, who he had been tweeting about repeatedly, led me to act irrationally and lash out in a way that was completely uncalled for. What's particularly unacceptable is that I used Alexander's personal struggles as a way to insult him. This was an incredibly low and hurtful thing to do, and I deeply regret it. There's no justification for resorting to such a behavior, even in a moment of anger. My intent, as immature as it was a way to get under his skin, but I now see how wrong and how harmful my actions were. Looking back, I'm ashamed of how I handled my emotions to take control and how poorly I handled the situation. My words were disrespectful, unnecessary, and reflected the level of immaturity that I am not proud of. And for that, I want to sincerely apologize to Alexander for the insults, for my lack of control, and for taking things to such a negative and personal level. In the next segment of your video, we'll address the most important topic, RetroDubs.
On December 7th, 2023, Retro changes at to Stel0AR, and his bio to "Get a hobby and stop scrolling through my likes, LMFAO." Around the same time, Retro would message CancerLord, another FNF Twitter user and modder. Apparently he uses this porn account for colleagues and his close IRL friend circle, which is kind of expected by this point, but why did he message CancerLord of all people?
I want to address this segment directly and provide full context. On December 7th, 2023, I changed my Twitter name to Stellar and to reach out to CancerLord. My intent in messaging him at the time was to discuss making call-out posts against people I held grudges against, or a situation that left an everlasting impact on me. I realize now that this is a poor and immature decision, as holding onto these grudges only fueled unnecessary conflict and negativity. To explain further, this wasn't the first time I had been in contact with people connected to CancerLord. A while back, one of his friends reached out to me seeking information regarding the Shelton situation. I responded to this inquiry by sharing my perspective and what I've been told about it. My intention was to clarify my point of view, but I understand now that discussing these matters without a clear picture could have been caused by further confusion or misunderstanding. Additionally, during this time, I was active on my NFSW account, where I primarily engaged in Friday Night Funkin' related NFSW content. Due to Twitter's algorithm, people from the Friday Night Funkin' community, including CancerLord, will often appear on my feed as a result of my activity on that account. That is how CancerLord eventually appeared on my timeline, and I approached him. Looking back, I recognize that my approach to handling these interreaction situations was wrong. Reaching out this way to people fueled by unresolved emotions and grudges was neither constructive nor appropriate.
Retro then pops off at other specific creators. He says that Caesar Fever is the last person on his list.
I want to take full accountability for this statement. What I said about Caesar Fever was completely untrue and a bluff. Caesar himself has done absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, the first time he addressed my situation privately, he wished for my mental health to improve. I deeply regret making such an an immature and baseless comment about him. To provide context, back in July, I dealt with harassment from several members of his community. People were leaving comments telling me to go back to Lolicon content, which led to a heated argument. Their response frustrated me, and while I found it corny at the time, I allowed that anger to fester and to turn a grudge towards Caesar. What I failed to realize is that Caesar and his community are two separate things. It was wrong for me to group them together and blame Caesar for the actions of the individuals within his community. I let my emotions get the better of me, and it led me to saying things that were both childish and unfair. I want to sincerely apologize to Caesar Fever for my statement. It was uncalled for, and I take full responsibility for my actions.
It's also worth pointing out that Retro got really mad because of Alex and the Mercenary's tweets. Throughout these DMs, Retro calls Alex, quote, this obnoxious fat f***, and said that his girlfriend said he should, quote, eat and die drama whore. He also refers to Alex as a fat, obsessed drama addict that plays his tuba instrument in college class, calling him Mr. Floor Sleeper in reference to Alex almost going homeless.
While Alexander's tweets may have upset me, what truly angered me was his announcement in a Discord server where he shared my NFSW account to a group of adults, but also minors. I found this to be completely immature and irresponsible as it exposed underage individuals to NFSW content which should have never happened. Following this, many of those minors immediately went to my like sections expecting to find Lolicon content. However, when they found none, the focus quickly shifted, and people began accusing me of supporting and liking incest. This conclusion was drawn because I had liked a meme of Ashley Graves, a character from a controversial game, as well as a single piece of a solo artwork featuring the same character. At the time, in December, I was worried that the game had stirred controversy surrounding fictional incest, but my reason of liking the artwork was simply because I found the character design visually appealing, not because I support incest. I want to state this clearly that I firmly do not in any way support or condone incest. Back to Alexander, I realize now that my emotional response to this situation, including insults directed towards Alexander, was completely uncalled for and unprofessional. While I was frustrated and upset, that does not excuse the way how I reacted to other things I said, and I want to take full accountability for allowing my anger once again to cloud my judgment, making hurtful and unnecessary comments, and I deeply apologize to Alexander for this.
Attached to this, Retro puts out a little message asking where Jonuh is nowadays. Cancelord simply replies saying that he's still around.
This was simply a genuine question. The person who resurfaced my conflict, Jonuh, randomly disappeared at one point. One of his friends even reached out to me asking on Jonuh's behalf if I was still on his bad side or if I hated him.
Days after this incident and after finding out that Cancelord leaked that Retro was DMing him, Retro makes a threat towards him, saying that he'll get one of his friends to dox him just like they did with Alex and Jonuh. A few days later, Jonuh gets swatted.
Okay, first and foremost, I want to make it absolutely clear that I had no involvement in doxing or swatting Alexander or Jonuh. The message I sent to Cancelord where I claimed to get one of my friends to dox him like they did with Alex and Jonuh was a complete bluff and made out of anger. At the time, I had no friends due to ongoing backlash surrounding my situation, and his statement was made to purely get under his skin. While my words were unacceptable, I take full responsibility for saying something so reckless, and I want to empathize that it is untrue. To explain the situation, I learned that Cancelord had leaked our private conversation through BluskysTV, who had been stalking and monitoring his activity. This angered me, and I initially believed our discussion was private, and I had no idea it was being shared in this server. My frustration got the better of me, which led me to saying something I deeply regret. So, I want to start off with Alexander. Regarding Alexander, it's important to clarify his history of being a victim of doxing and swatting. Between 2022 and 2024, the Friday Night Funkin' community saw a wave of doxing and swatting incidents targeting individuals for unknown reasons. During this time, many, including myself, private our accounts out of fear of becoming victims. Unfortunately, Alexander is one of those people who fell victim to these incidents, to those who have doxed him and swatted him. It's also worth noting that Alexander has, on occasion, a while back, accused multiple people of doxing or swatting him without evidence. However, most of these acts are carried out anonymously, leaving no clear trail to identify the individuals who's responsible for this. I want to stress that my earlier claim about they did with Alexander and Jonuh was not only false, but irresponsible, as it added unnecessary fuel to an already sensitive situation. I said it purely out of frustration due to Alexander's repeated tweets about me, but that's not excuse my actions.
But also, in that previous DM with Cancelord, he mentions Alex. Of course, we know this is referring to Alex and the Mercenary, the person who Retro has been seething over in Cancelord's DMs. Well, for a while now, Alex has been on the receiving end of a harassment campaign which included her being doxed. She's been messaged live leak videos and gore, her personal information was spread via email, Twitter, and even Roblox, where bot accounts were messaging random people. At one point, someone used her name and issued a shooting threat to her college, leading to a SWAT team arriving. Not only that, but during my conversation with Alex, she showed me screenshots proving that the harassment was at times a community-wide hit, meaning several people were targeted that were in the FNF community. This list of doxxed users includes several people who Retro has either had issues with or worked with in the past. Again, I really wish I could name them because the people that have been targeted were really specific to Retro, but you'll simply have to take my word on it.
With all due respect, I want to clarify I had absolutely no involvement in spreading his personal information via Twitter or email. Regarding Roblox, however, I, along with Alexander, experienced similar incidents where we received friend requests from accounts using legal names in states of multiple FNF creators as their usernames, including mine. Even my own Twitter handle was used in this strange and unexplained attempt, which remains a mystery to this day. While I could identify some of the names involved in these requests, I believe it would be irresponsible to reveal that information, as it is clearly wrong to share personal details regardless of the situation. In total, I received 12 friend requests. Out of those 12, the only person I had prior conflict was with Alexander. Looking back, I realized that if I had shared any personal information such as details regarding my legal name or state on my main Twitter account, it could have easily been used in these bot-generated usernames. These situations serves as a stark reminder of how unpredictable and dangerous these events were, not to only just me, but to many other people in the Friday Night Funkin' community who were also targeted. I want to directly address the accusations surrounding my alleged involvement in doxing and swatting of Alexander and Jonuh. Let me state unequivocally, I had no involvement in these events. The comment I made to get one of my friends to dox him was an irresponsible and reckless statement made out of frustration. It was a bluff, said without any intention or ability to follow through, as I had already cut ties with most people at the time. While this doesn't excuse my behavior, I want to be absolutely clear, I deeply regret making such an unacceptable statement. As evidence, I will provide a detailed timeline of events from my personal life along with additional screenshots from my normal private account to clearly demonstrate I had absolutely no involvement in alleged doxing and swatting incidents. The timeline of events will be from December 2023 to January 2024. On December 1st, I purchased Clip Studio Paint to prepare for an art class and a trip to New York. On December 9th, I shared my excitement about the trip on my private account. On December 17th, I discussed my financial situation with my mother and realized I could not afford this trip. This led to ultimate stress. On December 24th, I learned I would not be able to attend a trip or the art class due to financial constraints. I learned from Blue Skies that Chancellor had leaked our private messages about me, which deeply upset me as I believed our conversation were confidential. Out of anger, I sent a reckless message to Chancellor, falsely claiming that I would get one of my friends to dox others. This was a baseless and unacceptable bluff. I had no friends to carry out such an act, having already distanced myself from most people. Shortly after, I deactivated my NFSW account and briefly discussed the situation on my private account before moving on. On December 26th, I spent time with colleagues playing games to focus on moving forward. On December 28th, I vented privately about missing the trip to New York. From January 1st to January 19th, I dealt with personal family issues, which I won't disclose. On January 20th, I announced my decision to invest in online art courses and to begin on self-improvement and therapy. By January 21st and 22nd, I was fully immeasured in these courses, isolating myself from ongoing topics and failing to take care of myself. I want to highlight that accordingly to publicly available statements, Jonuh had already acknowledged being doxxed long before these events occurred. In one screenshot, he already noted that his information was already public. My assumption is that whoever that initially doxed him may have also been responsible for the swatting incident. He also allegedly accused someone of doxing him. This aligns with my position that I had no involvement in these incidents. I want to take my moment to express my sincere sympathy to Jonuh and Alexander's and their families to the stress of the swatting incident. While I had no involvement in these terrible acts, I deeply regret the reckless, irresponsible statement I made in frustration. My words were thoughtless and unnecessary, and I realize now how they could have contributed to perception of harm or confusion. Recently, on your second channel while discussing the Sandy situation, you mentioned that Jonuh was apparently a doxer now, which is why you decided to cut ties with him apparently. I want to acknowledge this point and clarify my own actions.
I'm not defending you unless you're someone who I know is a friend, and someone who I know I believe isn't fucked up. Someone like Unknown, or Cantalord, or fucking Seth, maybe. Jonuh was a person I was close to, and he's out here fucking doxing people. As soon as right when my RetroDubs video is going out. What are you gonna do with him? What are you gonna do?
While I take full responsibility for the lie I made intending to dox Alexander and Jonuh, it's important to note that I never acted on these statements, nor did I ever participate in doxing or swatting anyone. What I said was irresponsible, and I regret making that false statement, as it added unnecessary fuel to the situation. I'm addressing this now to take accountability for my words while ensuring there is no confusion between my actions and others' behaviors. I am truly sorry for any additional stress or pain my actions may have caused during a traumatic time. Swatting is a dangerous and inexcusable act that nobody should have experienced, and I fully condemn it. In the final segment, we'll be going over Retrover.
In conclusion, I never wanted to make this video, but RetroDubs unintentionally forced my hand by being such an egotistical prick. Despite clearly coming out of the situation looking worse, and despite everything you've just seen, Retro felt the need to actively brag about him gaining some sort of a W over me months later. All of this of course to the live chat and comments of my second channel. Just another testament to his pettiness.
I want to clarify this comment and address the implications. At the time, my response of, "This downfall was truly a retro-dub," was inappropriate and came from a place of frustration and immaturity. It was not something I should have said, especially concerning the seriousness of the situation. To be clear, I was not celebrating the conflict or the video being posted on your secondary channel. Instead, I made a comment out of misplaced defensiveness, attempting to cope with the situation through humor or sarcasm. Looking back, I realized that this response was rude, and given the circumstances, which I do apologize for. You interpreted my comment as me celebrating the fact that my career wasn't destroyed, or assumed that it was because of the live stream being posted on your second channel rather than your main channel. However, that was not the intention behind my comment. I made a comment as a way of coping with everything that was happening at the time. Additionally, back in April, I have been recently freed from Friday Night Funkin' projects, which felt like a fresh start in some ways. This comment was meant as a personal reflection, not as an endorsement or a celebration of the situation you described. At one point, I noticed you tweeted about this, and I created a Twitter account to respond. I acknowledged my mistake and hoped you were okay, especially since you had said something similar to me, possibly with sarcasm. But regardless, later, I decided to delete my comment. I didn't realize at the time that my actions might have caused you to hold a grudge for that, and I sincerely apologize, Tosify. As we wrap up Tosify's video, there's still more I want to address, and there are additional actions I have taken that I want to take full accountability for, and I'm not sure if Tosify himself was even aware of them. These incidents occurs at the same time I sent that unacceptable and false message to Cancelord. What I'm referring to is the situation involving Zero Phoenix that took place in December, which I want to address specifically and take responsibility for. During the time I was dating Chicadoodles, we created a private Discord server specifically for ourselves. It was around March or April 2023 when Chica finally opened up to reveal that her sister was Zero Phoenix. When I first heard this, I was shocked and didn't know how to process the information. I chose to focus on my relationship at the time and putting the issue aside. I planned to address it eventually, but when my own situation resurfaced in April 9th, 2023, I felt unable to talk about it amidst the ongoing conflict. I deeply regret not speaking up sooner. I hesitated to discuss drama publicly on my main account due to the fear of losing more friends, many of whom who had already grown tired of my involvement in FNF-related controversies. However, in December, while reflecting during a period of poor mental and emotional health, I remembered the significant information Chica had shared with me about Zero Phoenix. This memory pushed me to take action. Previously, I have been a moderator in Starbreak Music's Discord server, where Zero Phoenix had already been under a new alias and had heavily manipulated Starbreak in this entire community. I decided to reach out to Starbreak's admins and moderators with the truth of Zero Phoenix's identity. This eventually led to Starbreak publicly cutting ties with Zero Phoenix alias. My intent was simple. This was information that needed to be addressed. I deeply regret not acting on it sooner. I apologize for any distress caused by my delay. I hold no ill will to Starbreak. In fact, I respect him and his work. Reflecting on my actions reminded me of the harm caused, and I wanted to make things right. Even back in September 2023, I had written an unreleased document where I expressed genuine apologies to individuals like Alexander and Starbreak. Ultimately, I chose not to release it because I worried it might come off as guilt-tripping, but the feelings and regrets I expressed were sincere. I also want to take this opportunity to address a document I created on a burner account during my time in this situation. I take full responsibility for creating that account with the sole intent of exposing AnnkiVee for engaging similar behaviors to mine. The motivation behind this was ultimately petty, as I wanted to draw comparisons between a backlash I faced and a backlash they faced. Looking back, I realized how childish and inappropriate this action was. It was an unnecessary and poor choice on my part. After reflecting on my behavior, I reached out to AnnkiVee to personally apologize for my actions. Throughout this entire situation, I want to clarify I only created one burner account using the email burnerfnf123@gmail.com, where I messaged Jonuh on an account and you eventually did a live stream covering it. This will be my final and first time I address this situation. I want to give my genuine thanks to Tosify for creating this video, as it pushed me to reflect on not only just one or two things I've done, but the entirety of my actions. This is why I left the comment I made on his video. It helped me see the bigger picture. I'm done with petty feuds, childish grudges, and unnecessary conflict. My goal moving forward is to focus on personal growth and reflection. By isolating myself, I hope to gain the clarity needed to move past this chapter and become a better version of myself. I sincerely apologize for the delay in responding to the video about me. This original video was released near the end of the year, and at that time I was dealing with important personal matters and significant life events. I also wanted to take the time to carefully collect my thoughts and ensure a proper response. Without this preparation, this video would have been rushed and released in December 2024. Thank you for watching, and I want to make it clear that this will be my first and final response to this situation. I am committed to learning from my mistakes and striving to grow and improve moving forward. If you took your time out to watch the entirety of this video, you have my thanks. Until then, take care.